And good afternoon, everybody. And as Stefan said, welcome to this Liverpool Visitor Economy webinar, which I understand is now our 11th of 2020. And I'm pleased to say that it will also be our last of 2020. And let's hope that in 2021 we can start moving from a virtual webinar into real life. But today I'm delighted to say that we're focusing on the events and live performances that are happening in Liverpool now and will be opening soon. So for the first half of this afternoon's webinar, I'm delighted to welcome Gillian Miller from the Royal Court and Gemma Bodinetz from the Playhouse and Everyman, together with two of the members of the cast from the performance that is now live at the Playhouse, Tom and Aron. So really, Gemma, if I can turn to you, and I know the actors have to go because they've got a show that's going to be live soon, so they have to go in a few moments. Well, what really I wanted to know is, we know this year has been very, very difficult because the one thing none of us, well, you've not been able to do is to do what you love doing, which is to thrill and to captivate live audiences, to provide high quality performances across the venues in the city. And for you as the actors, your job is to tell tales and to, as I said, enthrall live audiences, and you've not been able to do it. So how has the year been? And almost more importantly, what are you up to now? And tell us about the performance and how, will it be different in the way that when we come into the theatre, and how are audience responding? Now, there's a lot of questions there, isn't it? So should we just, Emma, if you can just tell us what have the Playhouse and Everyman been up to this year?
Well, it's been, for everybody, of course, a really difficult year, and it is. I was writing a little blog, and I found myself saying that if there was a Hippocratic oath for theatre, it would be the show must go on. That is our mantra, and to think that you can't do that is almost, inconceivable. So to have gone through a year where we were in the midst of a fantastic show by Jonathan Harvey on at the Everyman that had got kind of amazing reviews, and we just had to stop. As I know, the Royal Court and all the theatres and performance spaces in Liverpool had to do. Since then, we've been really trying to keep the theatre's relationship with its communities and artists as alive as we can. And we did a fantastic sort of multi-chaptered digital project called Love Liverpool, which engaged the general public and actually won the Echo Award for Best Cultural Offering, which was, a combination of writers and actors writing a love letter to a city that they couldn't visit at that time when we were in full lockdown. The Playhouse is a life room in partnership with Mersey Care, and that work has been ongoing. And I think, like all theatres, we've been really trying to keep our digital presence and our relationship with our audiences as strong, and artists as well, because it's, as Tom and Aron will know better than anyone, it's a very, very frightening year for freelance artists, writers, designers and actors. So when we can, we've been trying, so tonight we've got a cabaret opening up at the Everyman, and that has very much been, we've got a very limited capacity. There's not a huge amount in it for the theatres per se, other than keeping that relationship with our audiences flickering alive, and a wonderful show by some Liverpool artists that just look what the Royal Court are doing. I mean, I won't take Gillian's thunder, but just the amount of artists that the Royal Court is employing at the moment bears testimony to the fact that it's a very holistic industry. We can't survive without our artists and our audiences. And so I suppose the last 9 months have been making sure that those relationships remain strong, even though we're not on stage.
Thanks. So Tom and Aron, you've got live performances now on the Playhouse stage in A Christmas Carol. So how is that? Obviously, for you, the lifeblood is to see the response to a live audience. Now we know we've got reduced capacity, and we've seen some of those measures. But for you as performers, how difficult has it been for you to obviously provide performance, keep the story flowing, but with COVID safety? And I understand there's one or two sort of particular nuances, excuse me, on stage where you you have to rely on some sort of artificial elements to maintain that social distance.
Yeah, you were saying before, which I thought was really interesting because it's so true, and it's something I would have always gone to, is one of our first and foremost jobs is to tell tales. And the sadness of all this is we haven't had the chance to be telling tales. But a huge thing of realizing with social distance rehearsals and social distance performances is another big part of that is also in some form to create a painting of what it's like to be a human being. So your instincts in any situation as a human being, as we've seen with people who've had loved ones in hospital and haven't been allowed even to go and see them, to be near them. But the instinct is, the human instinct in all these situations is to get close to someone, is to have some kind of intimacy. And you realize in a rehearsal of going, well, we're not allowed to do that in this situation. There's no way to create that intimacy physically. So you're finding new ways to do it. You're finding ways through dialogue, through words, through storytelling, and through stuff like extendable arms, extendable fake arms that only one person can touch. And it's, at first it's sort of horrible not being able to do that. And it's funny as well, you know, the mistakes, people making mistakes and having to clean everything immediately. But after a while, the challenge, I think, is really interesting for a performer and for a theatre maker. Aron and Gemma can probably back me up on this, but it's the challenge of going, how do I solve this problem, or how do I not solve the problem? How do I allow the problem to exist in itself? And maybe there's some drama in that. Has been really exciting, on top of being hilarious and frustrating and difficult. But at the end of the day, who cares about what those rules are? Because it means we could stand up in front of 130 people and do a play.
And I suppose, to be really brief, not to interrupt, but just to be clear about what those rules of engagement are for a socially distant piece of theatre. The actors must remain at 2 meters distance at all points in rehearsal and on stage. No actor can pass a prop to another actor without that being disinfected on stage or off stage. So you try and avoid that. No actor can sit on a seat that another actor has sat on without that seat being given anti-bac. No door handle, so no exit from the stage. You can have doors can be touched by more than one person without anti-bac. So we have a scene, for example, where it was really, really hard not to have a kiss. The dialogue around in the script was about 2 people kissing. Now, clearly that can't happen. So you are forced to be inventive, really inventive. So we have a sort of, at this point, a sort of cherub runs on with a giant screen, and Tom, well, the cherub is Aron, I've got Tom. And Tom and Helen Carter stand 2 meters apart at an angle, so that when the light's backlit, it looks like the shadow on the screen looks like they're touching and they're kissing.
That gets such a beautiful reaction from the audience.
Yeah.
I think partly no one's seen anyone kiss for 9 months. and also it's a very simple, clever effect that works.
I think it's a double whammy, that moment, isn't it? When I was sitting there, the audience go, oh, isn't that a beautiful way to show 2 people kissing? And then they have the second thought, oh, they've had to do that because they're not allowed to really do it. So it has a sort of real and meta kind of, we're all in this world. But it did force us to be really creative, and it was very difficult because we're doing a farce, and farces rely on quick exit, door slam, bang, bang, bang. There's a whole battle over who puts the needle on an old gramophone. If Aron, who has primarily touched that gramophone and brought it on stage, then nobody else can touch it. So we've got people kicking floorboards, pretending that would jolt the needle on a record. You just are forced to be very inventive, and sometimes that's funnier and better than if you just had 2 people putting a needle on a record.
And Aron, how are you finding the audiences responding to it? Because I know you like to play to full houses and get that interaction with the audience. How is it for you as an actor when the audience is reduced capacity? How does that work?
The audience response has been fantastic, actually, and all it reinforces for me is how much the audience is on our side, and how much actually this isn't about me and what I can do on stage, or what accent or what funny costume I can put on. It's never been about that. It's always been about what we can give to other people, what stories we can share, how we can affect or change lives. And in this year of hardship and struggle and toil, a story like Christmas Carol, which really appeals to the heart and really appeals to people's sense of giving and love, you know, never in my life or since I've been acting has it ever hit home more of how much actually this is for the people, you know, and they laugh, they cry, and 1 minute we have them laughing at us singing Holly and the Ivy, and the next minute they're crying at Tiny Tim's story. And you know, the audience is on our side, and the amount of my friend came to see it the other day with his nan, and he texted me the next day saying, I've never, you know, all throughout this entire year, my nan hasn't smiled like that. So thank you very much for sorting those tickets out for us. And that really touched me, and it really reinforced for me what this is all about.
Thanks, Aron. Yeah, it's very important as that story that we talked about being told, and you doing it in that way. In terms of ticket sales are going well. Are they? People are responding to it, Gemma?
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's look, it's a very, very reduced capacity. We've only got 150 seats on sale, more or less, and those we could have more. We were very aware that the perception of safety is as important as the reality of it. So we've erred on the cautious side with our capacity. We just wanted, for many people, it's their first. I mean, there is no safer place in the country than a theatre right now. I think theatres have really, really gone the extra distance. You get your temperature taken as you go in. You absolutely will never see another person. Our bars, your drinks are brought to us, all of those things. But it's still a nerve-wracking experience for people. So yes, the sales are great, but there's a massive caveat, which is that we don't have as many seats to sell as we would normally. At this most, you know, this is the time when theatres really can guarantee making money. It's a rare time of year, Christmas, when you normally go, this is where we sell out, because it's such an annual treat for people. So sales are great in that cautious way.
Great, good, thank you, Aron. And then Tom, I know you have to go off to another production, or to a production this afternoon, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in many more. Well, certainly for those, if there are tickets still available, Gemma, for Christmas Carol.
There are, and also people should be aware that we have special seats held for every performance for people to pay what they can, because again, the message of Christmas Carol is very much about that. So be sure to check out that as well.
Excellent. So
make sure.
Thank you. And if you're staying with us, Gemma, but if I can, and thank you, Aron and Tom, if I can come to Gillian and Iain, the Royal Court again is, we're very much looking forward to seeing Royal Court open with live productions. Yours is different. Yours is a Christmas cabaret, and is that tell us about the show, Gillian.
Well, I'm going to let Iain tell you about the actual show, but just picking up from what Gemma and the actors were saying there, you know, this has been such an emotional year for everybody in the theatre, and it's, you know, it's about, we've done ourselves proud really to get back on stage. And actually, Liverpool's kind of the cultural centre of the UK at the moment, because, you know, we're in tier 2. And thankfully, you know, we are open, and that is just an absolutely brilliant thing. But it is all about the audience. And I just wanted to read you, you know, we survey our audience every night after they come to the show. And I think this kind of sums up what Gemma was saying as well. What a show, loved it. Absolutely hilarious, but also quite emotional. Thank you all so much for giving us a much needed lift at this time. We applaud you all. And you know, we've had that time and time again from the audience, just people loving that kind of little bit of normality when they come into the theatre, take the seat and watch something on stage that's going to be funny, uplifting. They can see their favourite actors on stage again, and it's just quite emotional for staff as well, actually. But just on what we've been doing since March, and Gemma said we all got kind of stopped in mid-tracks. We had Pete Price's Dead on stage. Thankfully, Pete Price is still alive, and we will return to Pete Price again, but I don't think it will be until next year. But you know, we're not just about what goes on stage. We're all about, you know, our local communities. You know, we've been devastated to lose a space for being able to have our community choir in, to have our youth theatre in. We managed to do our youth theatre summer extravaganza in the theatre during August, and that was just fantastic. We had 66 young people in the theatre for 3 weeks, all learning, working together, having a laugh, meeting different people from all over different parts of the city. And we did it again in the October break for schools. We're hoping to get our youth theatre back together as soon as we can in January as well. So, you know, it's great on the one hand to be back open and to be welcoming people in. But, you know, as Gemma said, it's different inside the theatre, and it's different for the actors. So we've got 2 casts in case one person gets ill. Now, what we didn't really think about was so much, we were, you know, also focused on COVID. Our actor director, who's in one of the casts, but has directed the whole show, so the whole of the Christmas Cracker, he's been so, you know, working so hard, he lost his voice, he couldn't sing. And of course, in the second cast, his brother plays the same role as he does. So they're interchangeable, but because of COVID rules, Mikey was not allowed to go on stage to replace Stephen. So we put Mikey in the royal box out front, so they weren't mingling. And so Mikey had to sing Stephen's part last night when he sang on stage. So I don't actually think the audience noticed. We were going to light Mikey and make a big deal of it, but it was so good, and they sound so alike that nobody noticed. But you know, we're all thinking these things through every day. There's a new challenge every day, and yes, it's fun, but it's exhausting as well. But we're just so happy, very happy to be open. So I'll just let Iain tell you what the show actually is.
Thanks, Gillian.
It makes a change to know what the show is when I'm talking about it, instead of the usual Christmas show, which is make something up in March and see what the show ends up being in November. But we decided on Selection Box. Initially, we were going to do it as a straight sort of variety show, some singers, some comics, and add in a couple of scenes from shows from the past. But then as it developed, we had a little thread of a plot appeared, which was the idea that some of the regular actors had gone into the royal court one night because a light had blown, and you know, one of them had gone in to investigate, and they find that there's an audience in there, and so they said, "Oh, let's put on a show. Let's do something to entertain these lovely people." And it's been really nice because the whole show has been developed by Stephen Fletcher, who's directing, along with the cast. And he's sort of corralled them by getting them all to do their party pieces. So, you know, Keddy Sutton does some fantastic impressions. Hayley and Jamie do some amazing singing. Mickey Stark, Drew Schofield are strumming the ukulele and doing songs. Liam Tobin, Roy Brandon, they're doing impressions and sketches. And then when we get into the second half, then the idea is that they've created the show during the interval. So once you get into the second half, they do bits from some of our greatest hits. So sketches from Scouse Nativity, Snow White, the 12 Days of Christmas always goes down a storm. We dug out the polar bear bolero from Scouse the Antarctic. But it's quite good fun because I came in, I was watching opening night from the back of the circle, and I was watching the audience. I wasn't watching the show. Well, I was sort of watching the show, but mainly watching the audience. And the idea is to make them laugh a lot and make them cry a bit. And it was the bits where we made them cry that I got really moved. And I'm constantly told by my friends and family that I've got no soul and no heart. And if we can put a lump in my throat, it's doing well. But what I felt from it is that it looked to the audience like that they were remembering that this was possible, that theatre could make them feel like this. For the first time in 9 months, first time in 10 months, they actually got emotionally pushed to tears or to laughter. And from a ticket selling point of view, from a marketing point of view, I'm really quite excited by next year or whenever we get rid of these restrictions, because the whole audience will have had a year off, a year of not coming out to live theatre, and they are absolutely champing at the bit to come in and see shows. So that's the upside for me, and plus the much lower targets with social distancing. We've got 250 odd in our 1,000-seat theatre, and it's a real pleasure to see that sold out without having stress of we need to get some more people in for the matinee next week. So it's all come around pretty well, I think.
Thanks, Iain. Gillian and Gemma in particular, next year 2021, as Iain's just said, hopefully we'll have some restrictions. Well, with vaccination program happening now, hopefully by the spring we'll start to get some normality back into life. But 2021 we know is going to be very difficult, and for your organizations which rely on ticket sales, I mean, there's no large grants coming towards you. You need to work. So what do you need for 2021 apart from clearance that we can continue and fill the theatres?
Well, we need to stay in tier 2,
Warranted, yeah.
We got to stay there. If we can stay there now, it would be brilliant for us. But we have got money from the DCMS Recovery Fund, and it's really important to acknowledge that, because that has been our lifeline. We wouldn't, I'm sure Millicent would agree, we wouldn't be open now if we hadn't all have received that funding. And that's for us to open or stay closed, but to still be in existence come April, when hopefully restrictions will be lifted. But obviously for us, it's about the city centre. It's about a vibrant cultural offer that we can encourage people to come back to the city, to feel safe, to have a great time when they're here, to have that fabulous welcome that we're all so good at giving people, especially people who've never been to Liverpool before. So yeah, we're just desperate to get back and tell audiences that we're here. So what you can do is to help us, help spread the word, tell everybody what we've got on, how fantastic it is. Come yourself and see how safe it is, and just get the word out there, tell everybody.
We will certainly be doing all of that and making sure that people actually make sure that this year, if you're looking for what to buy people for Christmas, then do go and buy tickets for our great live performances, and look forward to everything in 2021. Just to say that we do have the chat function available if anybody wants to make any chat, and then one or two comments in there. Any questions for our panelists? But if I can ask Gillian, thank you for that. We look forward to, certainly I know I'm looking forward to some live shows over the holidays, very much so. But for now, if I can hand across to Chris, the second part of our webinar, and then we'll come back with Q&As at the end. So thank you for that. And thank you for the news, Gemma, that we're staying in tier 2, are we?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes, Bill, and hot off the press there, Manchester's staying in tier 3, which which I'm sure they'll be very upset about. But yeah. I think it kind of indicates how far Liverpool's come on since we went into tier 3, and that's down to, you know, the likes of, you know, the performance venues putting in those safety messages, I think really helps us in that direction. But how great it is, you know, that we're now having a conversation about live events and things actually taking place where, you know, a few months ago we were talking about, will we get to an immortal moment when those events would start reopening again? So that's great, and really good to hear from the actors as well. That was really good, insightful stuff. So delighted to have this session of the panel with Millicent from the Philharmonic, Bob from the ACC and Arena, and Colin Reader from MSP Global, who I should never forget to remember that this is your 20th year anniversary, Colin, yeah, so in business. So that's, I'm sure, been an interesting 20 years for you, but we'll come to that in a bit. So maybe just building, Bob, just come to yourself first. You know, we know how important the ACC complex is to the city in terms of the various events that you hold there, and you've had the opportunity after what seems an age to have held the downtown business event last week, which was the first major event in terms of business events. You've got Pantos coming up, you've got other events coming forward. But in terms of just having a look at that, in terms of the impact this has had on you, and particularly, you know, looking at the smart testing that you put in place for the downtown event, I mean, what's your kind of reflections on that, and how do you think it prepares you to be able to develop that further into 21?
Well, as you say, Chris, to bring it into stark reality, like a lot of other venues and businesses in Liverpool, we've been effectively closed for 39 weeks. We've had no business in whatsoever. So getting into tier 2 was really important for us. Doing the first business conference with colleagues at downtown and using smart testing as a prerequisite for getting into the activity was great for us. We've received a lot of national publicity around Liverpool leading on that. We work closely with the City Council, with the culture team, and with all the environmental health authorities to be able to stage that conference. And it's become a bit of an exemplar in the industry. So we're talking to a lot of the other venues around the country about how we did it and how we can develop it. However, the restrictions on tier 2 for us are quite limiting. If I give you a quick example, we can only do concerts in the arena with a capacity of 1,000, and we can only do conferences with a capacity of up to 1,000. And we can only do conferences for one day. We can't do multiple days. So those are very, very limiting factors for us to develop. As you know, as everyone will know, some of our concerts have 11,500 people in. Some of the conferences like Labour Party has 17,000. So for us to get back to where we need to be is a long haul, and it's going to be a hard road. We need to get back to, we generate for the Liverpool City region something like £200 million a year from the delegates and the visitors that are coming to us, and you know, they're spending money in hotels, restaurants, bars and taxis, and that tap has effectively been turned off. It's great that we're back on the horse and we're doing events. As you mentioned, we've got the pantomime opening with us on Friday. We're starting to do a few small capacity concerts in the arena. We've got a rock show on Friday, and then a tribute band doing a couple of nights on Saturday and Sunday. But we need to get back to full capacities. So we need to continue to develop smart testing. And obviously we're watching very carefully the developments around the vaccine because we need to push and lobby the government as much as we can to get back to a full capacity where we can turn that tap back on and actually get back to do what we're supposed to be doing, which is driving the visitor economy, bringing people into Liverpool for hotels, restaurants, bars, etc.
Yeah, and I suppose, Bob, is that sort of reflected in the pipeline of inquiries you're getting, that there still isn't confidence yet within the bookers yet to be able to take steps to put in place a booking because of this uncertainty that still exists, even though you are, as you say, starting to get back on that horse?
Yeah, it breaks down into the different markets we're in very quickly. You know, in terms of the concerts, it's about whether people are prepared to buy tickets. And as some of the other speakers have spoken about earlier in the Zoom, our pantomime is selling really good business. We're actually doing more business than we did last year, which is bizarre in many, many respects. But I think it shows the pent-up demand for people to get out and to congregate and to experience real live performance. So that's very encouraging for us. But in terms of conferences, you're absolutely right. There's two aspects to that. One is, are the delegates going to be prepared to travel from throughout Europe or from out the UK, depending on the nature of the conference? Will they come? And one of the other challenges we've got is that the organisers of these conferences are like us, have been in furlough for many, many months, and have they got the capacity to actually fire up and get ready for the conference? I mean, we've been moving conferences from March and April of this year. We moved them into the summer. We then moved them again into the autumn. We've now moved them for the third or fourth time into next year, into 2021. And it's all about this confidence. Is it safe? Will people come? So the more we can do collectively, and obviously we're working with you and Marketing Liverpool and the City Council to get this confidence thing going, that Liverpool is not only open for business, but Liverpool is open for safe business.
Yeah, and just give a bit, Bob, about the smarts testing that you did for the conference last week in terms of the kind of mechanics around there, some of the challenges around that in terms of being able to put it in place to get the commitment and support of those who are attending. Because obviously this is one of the things that we're looking at clearly as a city to see whether we can develop smart testing and in doing so increase the capacities for people able to come because of this barrier around commercial viability for some.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we've been doing at the at ACC Liverpool in the shutdown is we've been working with the council. We've been a centre for PPE distribution. We're a centre for food distribution for people who are in isolation, and we've also been a centre for the smart testing, which was enormously helpful because we were able to say, for example, to all the delegates coming to downtown, it's a prerequisite you get tested 24 hours before the event, and you turn up. And part of your registration is to show us you've got a negative test result. And that just literally worked seamlessly on downtown. Everybody complied with it. Everybody wanted to comply with it. They wanted to feel safe, and it worked. So it's a really good exemplar on how we can deploy it. But for us, obviously, if you imagine trying to do that on a concert with 11,000 people, it's a bit more of a logistical exercise than doing it for 250 delegates coming to a conference. So I think for us, in the context of getting back to the new norm, it really is about getting the vaccine deployed and getting as many people as we can inoculated and safe and protected.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bob. I'll come back to you on a couple of other things in a minute or two. So, Millicent, I thought from a Philharmonic perspective, I'm sure there's probably a lot of points you share in common with Gillian and Gemma in terms of getting audiences back. But how I mean, it's great to have them back at the Phil as it is at the Playhouse and the other venues at Royal Court and such forth. But how have you kind of found it getting those audiences back? What sort of challenges and issues has that given to you, and kind of how do you see that developing going forward into 21?
I think for us, it's been a real roller coaster ride. I mean, we've had 9,000 people through our building and audiences since we reopened in October. And that initial response was, yes, overwhelmingly positive. And, you know, we had 150 people in the queue in the box office telephone line, which was a record. I think obviously, and I think this is true for all of us, we've kind of gone through this optimism, pessimism, and that's definitely affected people's attitude towards coming out and purchasing tickets, especially because our audiences are largely older. Very reasonably, they are more reluctant to come out until there's a vaccine. And I think that is absolutely going to be the turning point that we're working towards. So yes, our Christmas shows, which are more commercial in nature, have done really well and sold out. Our family shows have done really well and sold out. But I would say some of our classical kind of core repertoire concerts have done really well, but I think that's going to be the challenge. And I think the environmental factors around the fact that we can only have 35 musicians on stage as opposed to our regular 80 means that the repertoire we can present is quite limited. I think we've done really well to keep everything going. And I think, as other people have said, I think we have done more orchestral activity than any other orchestra in the United Kingdom. I think now we might be entering Europe. There's not a single professional symphony orchestra in the United States that's done really any public performances since March last year. So we're absolutely doing what we can, and certainly our youth company is going full steam. Our choirs are going full steam. We've got choir concerts next week. So but I think we need to, in the spring, obviously, hopefully approach a point where the vaccine is there and the environmental factors around audience safety will be completely resolved. I think that's really the key. It has been a chance, and I think this has put a bomb under the live events industry generally to start doing some things differently that will continue to be done differently going forward. For example, we've put 9 of our concerts available to watch on demand for a ticket price, which is something we talked about for years but never tried. And the cost of doing that is enormous. We've hired a professional crew and director and everything. We spent £90,000 on those concerts, but we sold nearly 3,000 tickets. So I think for the future, that's definitely something that we'll probably try to continue to do. Even things like drink service, and I'm sure, Bob, you'll have experienced this. The rules mean now that you can only drink alcohol in your seats in the venue. So we've been able to institute pre-ordering of drinks, and that's gone really well. And it's stuff like that we won't probably go back to, trying to cram 900 people in the Grand Foyer bar to get a drink in 15 minutes in the interval. So there are definitely some silver linings to this, and I think it will have accelerated changes that might have taken 5 or 10 years, in the space of 9 months now. So that has absolutely been positive. The big thing for us, obviously, is it's our chief conductor, Vasily Petrenko's last season. And so we're hoping that by June, July, we can have a proper send-off as we plan for him. We launched the appointment of our new chief conductor, Domingo Hindoyan, during this period as well, in a way that we wouldn't have wanted to do. But again, we're going to be working hard to kind of build up his profile in the city within the next 12 months, because for an orchestra, that's really big. I think the commercial side of our business, the rock, pop, folk music, et cetera, is obviously going to take longer to come back. I mean, we still have some hope that in April we might be able to do some commercial events without social distancing, but that's very up in the air yet. I think the impact of that is that after the period in 2021, where hopefully social distancing will lessen, is going to be our busiest 12 months ever, because the diary is completely booked as we've had to move performances as we've gone along, so that we'll have a huge amount of events to present once social distancing ends.
Yeah, and of course, it's interesting, I think, what you're saying there, Millicent. We've had this conversation before about the demographics that feel more comfortable and the ones that feel less comfortable in that space. But as a generality, I mean, how have you found the audiences in terms of their adaptability to the changing surroundings? You heard that a little bit in the conversation Bill was having with the actors earlier, but from an operational perspective, particularly from the staff who operate within the Philharmonic, I mean, how have they found out? Because it's we think about the audiences, but the team that have to deliver those services, they too have had to take on a whole different range of different skill sets and approaches as well as part of their day job.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, and this surprised me a little bit, across the board, audiences have been fantastic in complying with an environment that is completely different. And I think Sarah was saying in the previous session we had, sending out the pre-concert email looks like a list of rules now, which is not ideal, but it's just the way it is. But I think they have been incredibly compliant. And I think once they've gotten over the shock of, oh, wow, there's only 300 people in the venue, they have really been appreciative, as everyone has said, about the experience and the importance of that experience, especially now. And again, I would say likewise, staff. To be honest, I anticipated far more difficulty, understandably, again, with some staff coming back to work in an environment that has 400 people in it with the orchestra. But we really haven't had those issues. They've been very flexible in adapting to the new conditions. And I think they see the safety need. It's blindingly obvious, and their actions affect the audience, and the audience actions affect them. So they've been excellent.
Right. Okay. And then if I come to yourself, Colin, I mean, very rarely you this end of the screen. You're normally providing the event support behind that, and you've built, as I said earlier, you built that MSP Global brand over the last 20 years. Yeah. So I mean, how from your perspective has it? I mean, how's it been? And how have you kind of reacted and pivoted to deliver different types of events over the last 9 months or so?
Well, good news is we're still here. We've been going for 20 years supplying, as you say. I mean, we worked with yourself 20 years ago when we first started up. we supply all the audiovisual equipment for a lot of local venues. We have all our own blue chip clients. We work with companies like Everton Football Club, Massillon, United Utilities. March 23rd for us was a saying of what they have in the theatre. The lights went out, and they literally did go out overnight. We literally went to the board and we ticked off best part of £1 million worth of business, which we just lost. People were either postponing or saying, no, we're going to call it a day. It went on, moving it from March through to July, and then July went through to September. And then from then on, it was cancellations, more cancellations. One of the things what really saved us was the furlough, because I still had the staff there, a warehouse full of equipment and nothing to do with it. So what we basically did is we come up with this concept of doing a virtual studio. So got all the LED walls out, started building the studio, put some cameras in there, a few bit of lighting, and then we just started marketing to see whether we could get people involved in it. At first, people were saying, "No, we'll hang on, we'll wait to see what happens." And then slowly, people were seeing that it wasn't going to open the industry again, so they started coming to us. And from then on, it's the thing what's actually saved the company.
Yeah, and how in terms of the development of that virtual opportunity, how are you starting now to see that kind of developing now into a hybrid model, and in the context of some of the things that Millicent was saying about things that will probably stay with us beyond the COVID pandemic. I mean, how do you see this sort of hybrid virtual physical mix developing in your industry? What's your kind of thought patterns about that?
Well, a lot of the people who've been into the studio, I mean, you've been in yourself, Richard, thank you again for raising the platform on that. A lot of people are saying that when the events industry does get back up and running, that they're going to actually include that into the events, because you can reach a much wider audience. We found now, the other day we did a job for United Utilities where we went to their office and we set up a whole studio in theirs, and they got out to 3,500 people. So I foresee it in the future as actually being part of the events industry coming forward. As regards from our side with events moving forward, we've had very little confirmations for live events for next year. We've had a lot of confirmations of virtual and hybrid, but I think a lot of people are waiting to see, firstly, if the vaccine works, and secondly, if, like Bob did the other day, with the mass testing, if that's the way forward.
Yeah, and how has it been for your team there? And we talk a lot about this, and we talked about it in the context of the performance venues, the supply chain, the vast amount of freelance expertise that sits in that space. Have you managed to retain those really valuable skill sets that's helped build your business up in the first place?
Yeah, we've lost a little over half of our staff. Obviously, the warehouse, the equipment's not gone out since March at all. We did our first event the other day for 35 people. But a lot of the skill set, and this is where I think it's going to be the big issue. A lot of people, especially freelancers, most of them are working for Amazon, most of them are driving, most of them have completely given up on it. And it'll be interesting to see, as I say, once the industry opens up again, how many people are still around. I'm hoping that this is just a temporary measure, and they'll all come back, because there's some very, very skilled and technical people in this industry. And, they don't deserve, what's actually happened here. And on another side as well, I felt as though for the freelancers, and especially for myself as well as being a director, we fell into this forgotten thing. We've had no funding from the government whatsoever. We had a few payment holidays on this, but we've literally scraped through. I don't know how, but we've scraped through, and we're still here. We're not going away. But it's been very, very difficult and very, very traumatic and stressful.
Yeah, and I think that there has whole swathes of that sector, particularly in the freelancers, and I'm sure Gemma and Gillian would support that as well, in terms of the lack of support there that has come through. And actually, as much as anything, the need to that support, this will take some time to rebuild. I think the government sometimes they take very short-term views of these things. They need to take a medium to long-term view about how they're going to get people back in, because those skill sets that you were talking about and encourage people to get back into business again is going to take some time to rebuild, isn't it?
I think the other thing as well, what people were saying as well who came in, it's like if you've got a conference where we're allowed 1,000 people, our company is willing to let them 1,000 people go to the venues on the off chance that someone's going to test positive and come back and half the company has to isolate. That's another thing. But as I say, that thing what Bob did the other day, maybe that's it looks like it's a way forward. Okay,
right. Just before I hand back to Bill, let me just whip round the three of you just to get your crystal ball out for a second. What's your wishes and best aspirations for 21, Bob?
I guess in a nutshell, it's let's hope the vaccine rollout gets cracking, and we get down to having mass vaccination and the building up the immunity that we need to do so that people actually feel safe coming back. I think for us, that's the way forward. Our forward order book, like every other members of the team have said, is incredibly busy for next year. We're getting to a stage now where we were busy anyway, and everything that's been postponed is stacking up the diary. So we could have a really good year, but it is really dependent on where we're at with COVID, where we're at with the tiers, and I think in summary, it's about getting the vaccine. That's the major thing for us.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, and yourself, Millicent?
I would echo what Bob said, but I also would say let's not forget the lessons of what we've learned during this period, because I do think we've learned a heck of a lot about things, and let's see how we can do things better when it does go back to normal. And I think let's not forget the experimentation and the resilience and the kind of grit that was able to see us through this period, and let's take that forward when it does go back to whatever normal is going to be.
Yeah, you're right. We need to capture and bottle that and keep it. And Colin, from your perspective, in terms of looking ahead, you've done brilliant to survive during this period, and what's your hopes for 21?
I'd like to see the equipment come off the shelf, the vans getting back on the road, all the lads back in work, and getting all the freelancers back into the whole industry again. And we all want to get back to doing what we do best. And as far as Liverpool goes, I think we're right up there. I mean, everybody says, oh, it's all down south, but Liverpool, we put on some amazing things here and amazing shows and events, and we can do it. We just need to get it up and running. Let's get back out there. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, great. Well, I've got a good set of positive points there to hand back to you, Bill. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Chris, for that. And actually, I'm going to come back to the same question to Gillian, Gemma, and Iain. So, Gemma, your wishes for and hopes for 2021.
Well, I mean, echoing everything that everybody's said, I think there is, a really exciting programme potentially for the theatres because of the postponed work. I mean, my own personal story is that I'm leaving the Everyman Playhouse after 17 years, and so I've just got a week left. And so I wish all the theatres in Liverpool and of course the two theatres that I've loved for so long all the best in this bumpy time. I think there will be fresh blood at the Everyman Playhouse, which is very exciting. And actually, as Millicent said, just a huge amount of lessons learned through this about looking after our customers, communicating with our customers. And actually, I think all of the venues have discovered that loyalty and that passion for the shared experience, that the difference between watching something on a screen, I think that's something that has become really valued by our audiences and by our artists as well. I mean, we've done a lot of digital projects and I'm very proud of all of them. There is nothing like that shared experience of potentially sitting near a stranger who is experiencing emotionally the same thing you are, laughing as hard as you are, crying as hard as you are. That's a very unique thing. And I think we've all missed it a lot and will treasure it in the future.
Thank you, Gemma, and thank you for all that you've done in Liverpool from all of us in the visitor economy. We look forward to seeing where your next steps in your journey takes you, hopefully not too far away.
No, I'm staying in the city, but I don't know yet what my professional story will be. That's all.
Great. Well, we look forward.
Out there supporting freelancers with a banner from now on.
Excellent. We look forward to that. And Gillian and Iain, from you, from the Royal Court, wishes for 2021.
Well, obviously, echoing everything people have said, to get the vaccine would be just amazing, and the sooner the better. I think, there's real challenges for the city centre as a destination venue, a destination city. And, I hope this has brought us more close together, working as the cultural sector, but also with you as the visitor economy, and that you see how valuable we are and how valuable we can be to helping the city get back on its feet and to bring the city centre back to life. And I'd echo what Gemma says about that live experience. There's no other city in the country that does it better than us. So, let's get back to filling our venues and pleasing those audiences as soon as we can.
Thanks, Gillian. And Iain, for you in 2021?
As everybody else has already said, for me, seeing 1,000 people sitting shoulder to shoulder in a room, enjoying themselves and laughing, and also capitalising on the new vigour and the new passion that they will have found, because at this time when everyone's been locked away, you really find out what you genuinely do miss and what you don't miss, and what you do miss, people will be fighting to get out and see again and do again. And for me, that's the arts, and that's, theatre and live entertainment. I'm also looking forward at some point late on to put on a coat and find a face mask in a pocket and go, oh yeah, remember that? I want to,
yeah.
I want this all to pass quite quickly so we can get back to doing what we do best.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Iain. Thank you. And we must all remember that all this will pass. And we will come back into a life of animation and enjoyment, and listening to those stories and watching those stories unfolding before us in our great theatres and venues. So thank you for today. And thank you for all those people who have joined our webinars over this year, 2020. As Chris said right at the beginning, the announcement was made that we are, as a city region, are staying in Tier 2 during the Christmas period. And that's great news for us, because unlike other cities not too far away, we will be open, our theatres will be open, our performance venues will be open, our restaurants will be open, and our football stadia will also be open, I'm delighted to say. But that's only because of the hard work that everyone in the city has done, from our city leadership, taking the brave initiative of saying to government, yes, we'll engage in the mass testing. And for us, the people of Liverpool, doing just that. So remember that if we want to stay in Tier 2 and we want to actually come out of Tier 2, we need to remember to follow the guidelines. Hands, face, space. Make sure we use our hand sanitizers and our face masks and covering, but also following those guides over Christmas as well. Just as a point of note, and I'll come to you, Chris, just for some final words, just to say, mass testing and pop-up testing facilities and testing facilities are available right throughout the Christmas period, throughout the city region. So make sure you take advantage of that. So go and get a negative test before you go to a theatre. Go and get a negative test before you go to a restaurant. You can never have too many tests. And one thing is that with the great service that we have, there's no cost for it, and it's a simple process. But you are protecting the people, and you're protecting the performances, and you're protecting the jobs of all of us. Chris, I know we are working on a recovery plan for next year. You want to just pick up on that for a few moments about what the plans are for 21, how we will get our city back on its feet, and how we will get this visitor economy sector moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think as everybody is, I think, highlighted on the call, it's going to be a rocky road. It's going to take time for us to rebuild, but I think Liverpool's in a good place for it. I mean, I think we are definitely within government at the forefront of their thinking at the moment around the role of smart testing, the reopening of events and venues, and I think there's definitely really good opportunities for us to build on that going into the new year. We desperately need to stay where we are within that tier system. Ideally move down, but we definitely don't want to move up. And I think there's a really, a lot of conversation at the moment about a really exciting program for next year that I think if everything goes to plan, will put Liverpool at the forefront of all the UK cities in that regard. But the plan will definitely be, moving from, hopefully from a survival, because survival is dominating a lot of our thinking at the moment, and then about, making sure that there is sufficient business support and ongoing support beyond March, that when furlough ends again, to make sure that the sector receives their support it needs, both locally and nationally, and then rebuilding our audiences, which primarily will, I think, be definitely domestic in the first instance. They'll definitely be sort of more regional and national, as every city will do, I think, in not only in the UK but in Europe as well, and then hopefully developing greater international audiences as we go forward. But I think Liverpool proved when we thought we might be coming to an end of this in August, that Liverpool came out of the blocks really fast and demonstrated very clearly to a lot of parts of the country about how to do it. And I've absolutely no doubt we'll come out fast again next year. I think we're demonstrating that with the discussion we've had today about the event sector is brilliant in terms of from where we were a few months ago in terms of reopening our events. We just got to keep the momentum going and make sure we're on the front foot, and make sure that we are the place that provides the compelling narrative as to why you should come here. And picking up a point that Gillian mentioned earlier, the city centre, we're going to have to do a lot of work to rebuild confidence in the city centre. That vibrancy, that excitement that made Liverpool, so special. We've got to recreate that, but in a different way as we go forward. So I think there are challenges for us in the city centre, no doubts about it. But we've got brilliant product in our city centre. I do think that this whole escapade that we've gone through will bring us tighter and closer. It will drive collaboration, I think, greater than we perhaps had going into COVID. I think that reliance on the whole ecosystem all working collectively and individually together is going to be a real legacy for us to build on. So I think we're, as a city, I think we can be confident about where we're going to go, but have no doubts that there's going to be a few more bumps in the road as we go along. But I'm very optimistic that as we come into the springtime of next year, hopefully vaccines, as everybody has said, has started by, we are going to be in good shape.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you to all our panelists today, and for all of those of you who have been attending our webinar today, and as I've said in those previous webinars. All it calls for me now is to say thank you to everyone again. Have a great Christmas if you are able to get one, whichever family, household bubble you are involved with over the Christmas period. Keep safe, keep well, and we look forward to seeing you in January of 2021. Bye all now. Thank you.